Hands up. Don't move. License now.
My hands are up, sir. I need to tell you...
No talking. Just do what I said.
I'm required to inform there's a legal firearm locked in back.
Of course there is. Don't you move an inch.
It's secured. I'm asking how you want me to proceed.
Step out. Slow. Keep those hands high.
I am stepping...
The red and blue lights cut through the windshield like a warning flare. It was 9:42 p.m. on a quiet access road outside Fayetteville, North Carolina, 10 minutes from Fort Liberty. The engine idled. The air smelled faintly of burnt rubber and pine. When the rookie officer stepped out of his cruiser, hand already resting on his holster, neither man knew this stop would end careers, ignite a federal investigation, and force a nation to look again at how power decides who is dangerous. If stories of authority, accountability, and the quiet cost of injustice matter to you, stay with this one. Listen closely not just to what is said, but to what is done in the moments when restraint should have prevailed. The cruiser's lights washed the road in alternating blue and red, turning the pine trees into silhouettes that flickered like nervous witnesses. Gravel crunched as the vehicle eased to a stop on the narrow shoulder. It was 9:42 p.m., logged automatically when the body camera activated policy required activation for all traffic stops, no exceptions. The air was cool for early spring, humidity clinging just enough to make the silence feel heavier. Inside the car, the veteran exhaled slowly and placed both hands on the steering wheel, thumbs resting at 10 and 2. It wasn't habit. It was training. Years of checkpoints and night patrols had taught him the same lesson over and over. Stillness buys time. Time buys safety. His engine hummed, steady, patient. The faint scent of gun oil lingered on his jacket, absorbed into the fabric long ago. Behind him, the rookie officer stepped out of his cruiser with a stiffness that betrayed how new he still was to this part of the job. The academy had drilled posture into him, shoulders squared, chin up, command presence before words. He adjusted his duty belt as he walked, thumb brushing the retention strap of his holster. The reason for the stop echoed in his mind, exactly as he would later write it: partial tail light obstruction. Possible equipment violation under North Carolina General Statute 22-129. He stopped just behind the driver's door, angled slightly, just like they taught him. The flashlight beam cut through the interior, lingering a beat too long on the veteran's face. "Good evening," the officer said, voice clipped, neutral, license and registration. The veteran nodded once. "Yes, sir." His voice was calm, almost soft. "Before I reach, I want to let you know there's a legally owned firearm secured in the vehicle." It was the correct disclosure. North Carolina required permit holders to inform. He knew the statute. He'd read it. He'd lived by rules written in ink and enforced with consequences. The rookie's jaw tightened. His flashlight froze. "Where is it?" the officer asked. "Locked in a case." "Rear cargo area," the veteran said. He didn't move. Not yet. The pause stretched. 10 seconds. Maybe more. The kind of pause that feels longer because no one feels it. The officer's training kicked an unknown risk. Weapon present, maintain control. His hand slid back to his holster, resting there, not drawing. Not yet. "Don't reach for anything," the officer said. "I won't," the veteran replied. "I'm asking permission." Something flickered across the rookie's face, uncertainty, maybe irritation. He stepped closer, too close, inside the space where calm conversations start to feel like confrontations. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. The veteran hesitated for half a second. Not defiance. Calculation. The door opened slowly, hinges creaking in the quiet. As he shifted his weight, his right hand moved instinctively toward the doorframe for balance. "Hey, hands!" the officer barked. The words snapped the air. In that instant, training collided with training. The veteran froze, hands halfway between instinct and compliance. "I'm steady," he said. "I'm steady." The officer grabbed his arm. The touch was abrupt, unnecessary, charged. The veteran stiffened, not to resist, but to protect his balance. The rookie misread it instantly. His grip tightened, fingers digging into muscle. Adrenaline flooding his vision until everything narrowed to motion and threat. "Stop resisting," the officer shouted, voice suddenly loud in the night. "I'm not resisting," the veteran said, breath controlled but strained. "I'm not." The sentence never finished. The rookie shoved him against the car, metal biting into ribs, the sound of impact sharp and unmistakable. Somewhere in the background, the body camera kept recording, its red indicator blinking patiently as policy demanded. The veteran's breath left him in a quiet grunt, more surprised than pained. For a split second, everything went still again. Then the officer reached for his cuffs, and the night tipped past the point of no return. The cuffs snapped closed with a sound that carried farther than it should have. Plastic against wrist. Final. The veteran didn't fight them. His shoulders sagged slightly as they locked, not from defeat, but from recognition. The kind that comes when you know the moment has slipped beyond explanation. Turn around, all the way, the officer said. I am, the veteran answered, voice tight now, controlled but edged with pain. His cheek pressed against the cold metal of the door, breath fogging the paint. The car rocked faintly as the officer shifted his stance, planting his feet wider, overcorrecting for control the way new officers often did when adrenaline outran judgment. The radio crackled at the rookie's shoulder, dispatch asking for status, a routine check-in. He ignored it. What unit were you with? The officer asked suddenly. The question landed wrong. Too late. Too personal. The veteran closed his eyes for a brief second before answering. Army, he said. Retired. The word retired didn't soften anything. If anything, it sharpened the moment. The officer exhaled hard through his nose, as if recalibrating the narrative in his head. Face forward, he snapped. The veteran complied. Always complied. Even as his wrists began to burn, nerves compressed beneath the cuffs. Even as the reality settled in not fear, not anger yet, but the heavy understanding that this would not end roadside. Backup sirens grew in the distance, faint at first, then clearer. The officer finally keyed his radio, voice tight, professional again, reporting a detained subject and requesting assistance. The words sounded practiced. Clean. Nothing in them hinted at how fast things had escalated. As the cruiser doors opened behind him, the veteran stared out at the dark tree line, lights painting the forest in restless color. He thought briefly of other nights, other roads where restraint had meant survival. He wondered when restraint had stopped being mutual. The rookie stood rigid, eyes forward, jaw clenched. The camera on his chest kept blinking, recording everything. Indifferent. Unforgiving. By the time the second unit pulled in and the scene began to fill with voices and radios and movement, the damage was already done. The stop that started as paperwork had become something else entirely. And as the night closed in around them, neither man yet understood how far the consequences would reach, or how much this single decision would cost. The sirens faded into a low hum as the camera drifted upward, away from the road toward the quiet that would soon be shattered again. The holding room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee, a place designed to feel temporary but never did. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flattening time into something dull and procedural. The veteran sat on a molded plastic bench, wrists cuffed in front now. Courtesy extended only after a supervising sergeant arrived and quietly corrected the rookie's positioning. Policy mattered more indoors, appearances mattered. The rookie stood just outside the doorway, arms folded, eyes fixed on a spot above the opposite wall. His body camera was still recording department policy required continuum. Capture until the subject was secured and transferred or released. He knew that. He also knew the footage would be reviewed frame by frame. Every step, every word. He replayed the moment in his head anyway, searching for the instant where control had slipped and wondering how to describe it without sounding unsure. Inside the room, the veteran rolled his shoulders carefully, testing the ache along his ribs. He'd learned long ago how to inventory pain without dramatizing it. You name what hurts. You assess what still works. You breathe. The cuffs pressed against old scar tissue on his wrists. Memories layered beneath skin deployment. Hospitals, field medics, the quiet professionalism of people trained to act without malice. He stared at the floor, not in shame, but in focus. A lieutenant entered with a clipboard, eyes flicking between the two men. Rank shifted the temperature immediately. Voices softened. Movement slowed. The lieutenant asked the questions that mattered: time of stop, reason, use of force, justification. Each answer had a checkbox waiting for it. The rookie spoke first. His words came out formal, structured, lifted straight from the language of the academy. Subject failed to comply with verbal commands, exhibited tense body language. Officer perceived potential threat due to admitted firearm presence. The lieutenant nodded, pen moving, no judgment, just documentation. The veteran was asked next. He looked up, meeting the lieutenant's eyes steadily. "I followed instructions," he said. "I announced the firearm as required by state law. I asked before moving. I was grabbed before I could finish complying." Silence settled between the sentences, not hostile, just heavy. Training had shaped both men, but in opposite directions. For the rookie, training was recent, rigid, still loud in his head. The use of force continuum wasn't a guideline yet, it was a ladder you climbed quickly when fear whispered that hesitation could kill you. Instructors had warned him about traffic stops, about how fast things went wrong, about the danger of assuming calm meant safe. For the veteran, training had been something else entirely. Years of repetition had burned restraint into his muscles. He'd been taught that power was most dangerous when it rushed, that authority without patience became liability. De-escalation wasn't a buzzword where he came from. It was survival doctrine. A nurse arrived to assess injuries, following county protocol for detainees involved in physical encounters. She checked his vitals, noted tenderness along the ribcage, slight abrasions on the wrist. "I recommend imaging," she said quietly to the lieutenant, "just to be safe." The lieutenant agreed. Procedure again? Neutral, relentless. Down the hall, the rookie finally unclenched his jaw. He watched as paperwork began to stack, as supervisors appeared where moments ago there had been only him and the road. He felt something unfamiliar creep in beneath the adrenaline doubt, not about safety, about judgment. Outside, the cruiser cameras kept rolling, capturing nothing but empty asphalt and flashing lights. Somewhere in the system, timestamps aligned, reports queued, footage uploading automatically to secure servers, preserved under evidence retention rules that left no room for editing or erasing. Training had brought them here. Experience had tried to slow it down. And now, the system was awake. The transport to the hospital was quiet. The veteran sat in the back of the ambulance. No sirens, no urgency, just the soft hum of tires on pavement and the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor confirming what no one disputed: he was stable. The medic asked routine questions, documenting answers with professional detachment. Name, age, pain level. When asked about prior injuries, the veteran paused, then shook his head. "Nothing relevant," he said. He had learned long ago that not every history needed to be explained. At the station, the rookie watched the ambulance door close. For the first time that night, he was alone. The supervisors had dispersed, leaving him with his thoughts and the quiet click of the bodycam finally powering down. He sat in his cruiser longer than necessary, hands resting on the steering wheel exactly where he'd seen the veteran places earlier. The realization unsettled him. He pushed it away. Later, during the initial administrative review as required under departmental policy for any force beyond compliant handcuffing the rookie, would be asked whether he believed lesser options were available. He would answer carefully. He would say he followed training, and he would mean it. But the question would linger anyway, hanging between words like an accusation that never raised its voice. In the hospital corridor, the veteran stared at a muted television mounted high on the wall. Local news cycled through weather and traffic. Nothing about him yet. That would come later. For now, there was only paperwork and x-rays and the quiet indignity of explaining himself again, calmly, precisely, as if clarity might still outrun momentum. Two paths had crossed on a dark road, each shaped by institutions that claimed discipline and order. One prized control above hesitation. The other taught patience as a form of strength. Neither had bent in time. As the night gave way to early morning, reports were filed, footage archived, and narratives began to harden. What had started as a minor stop was no longer just an encounter, it was a test of which kind of training the system would ultimately defend. And the answer was already moving, quietly, through channels that neither man could see yet. Morning came without apology. Sunlight poured through the hospital windows, clean and indifferent, exposing everything the night had tried to blur. The veteran lay on the narrow bed, one arm draped across his chest, eyes open. He hadn't slept. Sleep requires trust in the body and the world, and both felt provisional now. A doctor stood at the foot of the bed, tablet in hand, speaking in the careful cadence of someone trained to deliver facts without judgment. No fractures, she said. Contusions along the rib cage. Soft tissue inflammation. We'll document everything. She paused, then added, quieter, you did the right thing coming in. Documentation mattered. The veteran knew that. Injuries unrecorded might as well not exist. He nodded once, a gesture that carried years of discipline and restraint. When she left, the room fell back into a hush broken only by the distant squeak of carts and the low murmur of nurses changing shifts. His wife arrived just after 8. She took in the scene without speaking at first, the hospital wristband, the faint bruising already darkening beneath his collarbone, the stillness he wore like armor. She sat beside him and reached for his hand, careful of the tender spots. No tears. Not yet. Their conversation was quiet, practical. What happened? What comes next? Who needs to know? Across town, in a windowless conference room at the precinct, the rookie sat beneath a framed mission statement about service and integrity. Internal Affairs had opened a preliminary review automatically, triggered by the use of force flag in the report. This wasn't discipline. Not yet. It was process. He told himself that repeatedly as the investigator asked him to walk through the stop again, step by step. When did you perceive a threat? The investigator asked. The rookie swallowed. When he moved, he said, after disclosing the firearm. Was the firearm visible? No. Was it accessible? It was locked in the rear, according to him. The investigator nodded, typing. No reaction. Just accumulation. Body camera footage played silently on a monitor behind them, the timestamp glowing in the corner, 21:42:17. The moment his hand touched the veteran's arm. The investigator didn't comment on it. Silence was its own pressure. By mid-morning, the first cell phone video surfaced online. Shove. From across the road, grainy but unmistakable. The shove. The raised voice. The words stopped resisting, echoing into the dark. It spread quickly, stripped of context but heavy with implication. By noon, it had been shared thousands of times. By evening, national accounts were reposting it with captions that hardened into verdicts. The department's public information officer released a brief statement citing an ongoing review and urging the public to withhold judgment. The union issued its own, reminding readers that officers face split-second decisions. Both statements landed flat, swallowed by the visual certainty of footage replayed on endless loops. At home, the veteran watched none of it. He sat at the kitchen table, ice pack pressed against his side, listening as his wife fielded calls. A former unit commander checked in. A neighbor stopped by quietly. Support came without spectacle, steady and grounding. He felt anger rise only once, briefly, then settle into something heavier. Resolve. By the end of the day, a civil rights attorney had been retained. Not out of vengeance, but clarity. The complaint would cite Fourth Amendment protections, excessive force, unlawful detention. It would move through federal court because that was where such questions belonged. Night fell again. The rookie lay awake, replaying the footage he knew was already everywhere. The veteran sat in silence, considering the weight of speaking publicly. The aftermath had begun not as chaos, but as alignment. Facts assembling, systems engaging, and nothing now could stop what was already in motion. The second day brought structure to the shock. Paperwork multiplied, phone calls became scheduled. The veteran returned to the hospital for follow-up imaging, each visit logged. Each bruise photographed under clinical lighting that made pain look almost abstract. The attending physician explained soft tissue trauma in plain terms, noting reduced range of motion and recommending rest. The words were calm, neutral, but the medical record they created would speak loudly later. At the precinct, command staff convened behind closed doors. Bodycam footage was reviewed in full, no fast-forwarding allowed under department review protocol. Supervisors watched without commentary, noting moments where tone shifted, where distance collapsed too quickly. Training manuals lay open on the table, pages marked with tabs use of force thresholds, de-escalation guidelines, firearm disclosure procedures. The room was quiet in the way only institutions get quiet when liability enters the conversation. The rookie was placed on administrative duty pending the outcome of the review, not a suspension. A pause. His badge still worked. His uniform still hung in his locker. But the patrol schedule moved on without him. He told himself this was temporary, that the system was fair. That intent would matter. Outside, the story continued to grow. Veteran organizations issued statements of concern, careful not to inflame but firm in their language. Civil rights groups called for transparency. The city announced it would cooperate fully with any external inquiry, a phrase polished by repetition. Late that night, the veteran stepped onto his back porch, the house quiet behind him. The neighborhood was still. Crickets filled the dark. He breathed in, slowly, feeling the ache in his ribs respond. Justice, he knew, would not come quickly. It never did. But it would come through process, through records and testimony, and the patience he had practiced his whole life. In another part of town, the rookie stared at the ceiling, realizing for the first time that training alone might not be enough to protect him. The aftermath had settled into something more dangerous than chaos. It had become public, and as attention sharpened into scrutiny, the story was about to leave the local stage entirely. By the third week, the story no longer belonged to the city. It moved the way national stories do picked up, reframed, sharpened. Cable news anchors spoke in measured tones while graphics behind them froze the moment of impact into a still image that seemed to accuse everyone who looked at it. Legal analysts debated standards of reasonableness. Former officers nodded gravely. Comment sections hardened into opposing camps that never spoke to each other. Inside the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division, a request for records went out under official letterhead. It wasn't an announcement. It wasn't an accusation. It was a signal. Training curricula, use of force reports, bodycam compliance logs, complaint histories, everything from the last 5 years. The city's legal department acknowledged receipt within hours. That was when the tone changed. At City Hall, an emergency session was scheduled, not because council members wanted answers, but because they could no longer afford silence. The police chief stood at the podium beneath the city seal, shoulders squared, words careful. "We are committed to transparency," he said. "We take these allegations seriously." He did not mention the rookie by name. He did not need to. Everyone already knew it. The rookie watched the press conference alone from his apartment couch. His uniform hung untouched in the corner. He noticed details now he hadn't before: the chief's phrasing, the pauses between sentences, the way commitment was framed as future tense. He felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not anger, exposure. His attorney advised him not to speak publicly. "Let the process work," she said. "Anything you say now becomes permanent." He nodded, grateful for the clarity. Silence, once a choice, was now strategy. Across town, the veteran sat in a quieter room, a law office with tall windows and walls lined with framed verdicts. His attorney spoke calmly, outlining the federal complaint. Excessive force, unlawful detention, failure to de-escalate. Each claim anchored in statute, precedent, and timestamp footage. Nothing theatrical, just alignment. "Once this is filed," the attorney said, "there's no putting it back in the bottle." The veteran understood. He had signed orders with heavier consequences than this. Still, he felt the weight of it, not fear, but gravity. Public exposure is a force. It pulls everything into view, including parts you didn't intend to show. When the complaint was filed in federal court, it landed with a quiet thud that echoed anyway. Reporters parsed it line by line. Experts weighed in on whether qualified immunity applied. The phrase itself became a headline, a fault line, a stand-in for arguments far larger than the two men at the center of the case. Bodycam footage was released under public records law, unedited, exactly as policy required. Watching it felt different this time. The grain of the video, the slight shake in the rookie's voice, the veteran's steady tone. Context didn't soften the moment, it clarified it. The rookie's training records were requested next. Dates, evaluations, instructor notes, no scandals, no red flags, just a pattern of accelerated confidence and limited field exposure. The kind that looked fine until it wasn't. By the time a congressional representative called for a broader review of traffic stop procedures, the story had completed its transformation. It was no longer about a single stop on a dark road. It was about systems, how they train, how they protect, how they respond when harm becomes undeniable. Late one evening, the veteran stood alone in his garage looking at the car that had started it all. The dent where his ribs had hit the door frame was faint, easy to miss. He ran his hand over it slowly. Exposure had stripped away illusion. What remained now was consequence. And consequence, unlike outrage, does not fade quickly. The pressure didn't arrive all at once. It accumulated. City emails began with disclaimers and ended with caution. Union representatives held closed-door meetings that stretched late into the evening, voices low, blinds drawn. Insurance carriers requested briefings. Risk assessments were updated. Words like liability and pattern entered conversations where they had never been spoken aloud before. The rookie was instructed to surrender his service weapon temporarily, not as punishment, but protocol during an active federal review. The metal felt heavier than usual when he placed it on the evidence counter. For the first time since graduating the academy, he left the building without it. The absence followed him home, an unspoken reminder that authority was conditional. Friends stopped asking how he was doing, some out of loyalty, others out of uncertainty. He learned quickly how isolation forms not through rejection, but hesitation. The veteran, meanwhile, sat for a recorded deposition, not yet testimony, just preservation. A court reporter typed quietly as he spoke, each word captured in real time, unalterable. He described the stop without embellishment. Dates, distances, the exact phrasing of commands. When asked how the encounter made him feel, he paused. "I felt misread," he said finally. And once that happened, everything after was inevitable. The attorney nodded but didn't interrupt. Silence was allowed here. It carried meaning. As the deposition ended, the court reporter slid the transcript across the table for verification. The veteran scanned it carefully. Accuracy mattered. Truth deserved precision. Outside the legal rooms, policy discussions began taking shape. The city announced a review of traffic stop training, particularly around firearm disclosure encounters. It was framed as proactive, but everyone understood the timing. Departments across the state watched closely, some quietly adjusting their own procedures without waiting for instruction. National organizations took note. Conferences scheduled panels, white papers circulated. The story became a case study while it was still unfolding. One evening, weeks after the stop, the rookie received notice of a formal disciplinary hearing, not criminal, administrative, but binding. His attorney explained what that meant. Standards of proof were different here. Intent mattered less than outcome. Policy mattered more than fear. He sat alone afterward, the letter folded neatly on the table, realizing that exposure wasn't just about being seen. It was about being measured against rules he thought he understood, against expectations he hadn't fully grasped, against a system now forced to look at itself through the lens of consequence. Across town, the veteran watched the sun dip below the horizon, the sky darkening into familiar shades. He felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that whatever came next would not just close a chapter, but open something larger. The machinery of accountability had engaged fully now, and once it does, it rarely stops where it began. The settlement was announced on a Tuesday morning, deliberately early, before the day could gather momentum. The city released the figure in a written statement, no press conference, no podium. Just numbers and language shaped by attorneys. $10 million. Not an admission of guilt, the statement clarified, but a resolution in the interest of the public. Numbers move differently than outrage. They land heavier, they leave marks. By the time the figure hit national news, the story had already changed shape again. Commentators debated what $10 million meant, whether it was excessive, whether it was overdue. But inside City Hall, the conversations were quieter, sharper. Budgets had to be amended. Insurance premiums recalculated. Future settlements projected. The cost was no longer theoretical. The rookie sat in a small hearing room, hands folded, posture still rigid but no longer confident. The administrative panel faced him from behind a long table, binders open, policies tabbed. They did not raise their voices. They didn't need to. The findings were read calmly, methodically. Failure to de-escalate. improper escalation of force, violation of departmental standards during a firearm disclosure stop. The words felt clinical, final. His termination followed immediately, effective upon conclusion of the hearing. Badge surrendered, credentials voided. His career ended not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a signature on a form and a quiet instruction to exit through the side door. He did not argue. There was nothing left to argue against. Training had explained what should have happened. Experience, now too late, had shown what should not have. Outside, no cameras waited for him. Exposure had already done its work. What remained was aftermath, lived privately. Across town, the veteran sat in the same law office where the case had begun. The settlement papers lay on the table between him and his attorney, heavy with ink and consequence. He read every page slowly, not because he distrusted the process, but because this was how he honored it. When he signed, he felt no surge of victory, just a release of pressure he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Justice, he knew, was not a feeling. It was an outcome. The city announced reforms alongside the settlement: mandatory de-escalation retraining, revised firearm disclosure protocols, an early warning system to flag escalation patterns before harm occurred. These changes were framed as progress, but they were born of cost. Every policy update carried his name in its footnotes, whether written or not. That evening, the veteran drove the same road where it had happened. Not out of compulsion, but intention. The asphalt looked ordinary in daylight. No markers, no signs, just a stretch of pavement that had held too much meaning for too long. He pulled over briefly, engine idling, and sat in silence. His ribs still ached when the weather changed. Some things lingered, but as he drove on, he felt something shift, not closure exactly, but alignment. His sense of right and the world's response finally matched. In another part of the city, the rookie packed away his uniform. Each piece folded carefully, habit refusing to die even as purpose did. He stared at the fabric for a long time, then placed it in a box he would not open again soon. Accountability, he was learning, was not about punishment alone. It was about consequence that reshapes futures. The $10 million would be discussed for years, but the deeper cost, the one that mattered, had already been paid in careers redirected, policies rewritten, and a system forced to acknowledge its blind spots. Justice did not roar in the end. It moved quietly, through documents and decisions and doors closing where they once stood open. And when the story finally faded from headlines, what remained was something harder to erase: a record, a reform, and a reminder that power, when misused, always leaves a bill behind.